Could I just say, I'm last here today, but I just wanted to refer to something. It's mentioned earlier, the discussion earlier on, which I missed due to work, was about the media and politics. And I wanted to share with you a very short story, because the relationship between the media and the power of the media and the power it has over you and all of us is very important. Before the last general election, there was a panel discussion organised by RTE, and it's organised for the Chamber in County Hall. And the invited candidates to it, one of my party colleagues phoned me and said, "Have you been asked to it?" On the day it has happened, he said, "It's the first I heard of it." He said, "There's something happening, there's a panel discussion in County Hall today, and RTE are going to interview the candidates, and it's for the 6-1 News, or just a slot following the 6-1 News." So I phoned up RTE, and I said, "Hello, my name is Brian Stanley. I'm the Sinn Féin candidate, a member of the County Council, former mayor of the town, Portlaoise, and former vice chair of Laois County Council." And he said, "Yeah." I said, I hear you're having a panel discussion this evening in County Hall, or this afternoon." He says, "Yeah, we are, yeah. But you were not invited." I said, "That's all right. Why am I not invited?" Well, he says, "You're not one of the serious candidates, right? You're not one of the serious candidates." So I said, "Fair enough, that's all right, thank you very much." So I went off about my business. So anyway, the 6-1 News come on, and the serious candidates run it after the 6-1 News, and they were interviewed. Some of them made it. None of them were members of the County Council. That's because two of them, in fair play to them, were TDs. Sean, and by right, should have been there. Charlie Flanagan was the other. But despite being a member of the County Council, the doors remained locked in my face. And I'm just sharing that with you. It's not because it's me, but that's the power of the media. And we need to look beyond that, and people need to have their eyes wide open to it, the power that it holds over people. It's not the story you read, it's the stories you don't read. They're the important ones. We just say that in relation to the theme of this, A Vision for Ireland, everybody here will have a vision. Everybody in the audience will have a view. And Mary shared hers, very, very entertaining at one level, but also very, very deep and incisive the way she conveyed it. And I'm sure a lot of people will identify what she's saying in relation to the kind of plastic images that have been, that we create of ourselves and of Ireland at the moment. There's as many visions as there's people here, and all of them need to be, we need to have free and open discussion about them. My vision is a Republican vision. It's a Republican vision based on my beliefs. A republic, I want to see a republic which guarantees religious and civil liberties and equal opportunities for all its citizens, and which does cherish all of the children equally. And if we just quote one sentence from Lalor, because the question was asked earlier on what he stood for, and he was a complex character, but one interesting sentence I think that he said was that he acknowledged no right of property in 8,000 persons, be it noble or ignoble, which takes away all rights of property, security, independence and existence itself from a population of 8 million, and stands in bar to all political rights of the island and all social rights of its inhabitants. Now, there's 6.5 million of us today on the island. There was 8 million at that time, of course, just before the famine. And as we approach the centenary, as we mentioned already, of the 1916 Rising, it is timely to reflect on the words of the proclamation, and parts of it has been mentioned, and I just want to mention one sentence of it. And you can see the influence of Lalor here through Connolly and Pearse and McDermott and the other radicals in 1916. And I quote, "We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible," unquote. And fast forward 97 years to where we are now. Sovereignty and equality. How much sovereignty have we got? How much equality have we got? We have fallen a long way short. Fintan Lalor was a giant of Irish history, and in most countries he would have been heralded as a leader and a visionary, and he is now belatedly. And thanks to the committees and the Lalor clan and Laois County Council, who have made sure that he has got the recognition, and other people who are interested in the community, people like Michael Parsons, even though he is of a different political persuasion than myself, who have seen to it that he's got his rightful place in history. I suppose for me, despite growing up in the next parish in the parish next to where James Fintan Lalor lived. I grew up in Mountrat, on the Raheen side of Mountrat. I never heard a word about James Fintan Lalor at school. And I've thought deeply about this over the last week. I've asked people who was in school with, do you remember him being mentioned? There wasn't a mention of him in our history books. Looking at it now, you'd have to conclude, was he written out of the history books in the 1960s and 70s because of his radicalism, because he was a socialist, because he was a Republican? Many of the challenges that Fintan Lalor wrote about remain with us. I suppose, it's fair to say we're not in the 1830s or 1840s, and the scale of poverty is not unlike what it was then. But the key issues, the control of resources, and one of the earlier speakers said, it doesn't matter who owns what. I disagree with that. Ownership is power, and Fintan Lalor understood that. Ownership of land, because that was the main source of power at that time. That was the key issue. In our days, in our times, it's more than land. It's natural resources, it's wealth, it's industry. And the decisions by this government, which was put in place by the previous one, and Irish Water was referred to earlier on, that was in the 4-year programme of the previous government in 2010. I read it out of it. When we have decisions to sell off industries, vital industries, such as Aircom by the previous governments, Bord Gosh, ESB are taken, they're not taken in the national interest or in the interest of public service, but in the interest of profiteers. We've paid off bondholders, probably the biggest crime committed in the 20th century against the Irish people. We've paid off unguaranteed bondholders with absolutely no obligation whatsoever, and every household in this state is feeling the pain of that. Add to that the great giveaway of natural resources, such as oil and gas, the deals that are there from the 80s and 90s. And what have we got? A banana republic? It's a poor shade of what was envisaged in 1916. Meanwhile, the public continued to pay for the disastrous public-private partnerships. And we have them in this county. In the forthcoming budget submission, the construction industry, they wanted to make it mandatory that all state projects over 150 million would be PPPs. Not content with helping to bankrupt the state once, they wanted to help do it all over again. And there's a lot of talk about the country, but the country doesn't stop above a Dundalk or Carlingford. The north is part of the country. The same rules of capitalism dominate. It's even further compounded by the denial of fiscal powers, which are held by London, not by the Assembly in the north, something that some of the political parties down here haven't actually grasped yet. Taxation policies, all of those policies are dictated by London, not by the Assembly up on the hill of Stormont. The financial decisions to impact on people in Belfast and Newry and Derry are made in Westminster. Now, we have to recognise that we live in a global village, it's often referred to, and we do need, I'm not arguing here for state control over everything. What I am arguing is, and if you go back to previous generations, there should be state control of the key industries and key infrastructure. Private companies should not have the control of the motorway out there that was built mainly by taxpayers' money, the N7 and N8. Dick Turpin used to have to stand with a gun in his hand and hold up people to take money off him. There's now a toll bridge. That's how it's done. The toll bridge, I read the story of the Shane Ross's account of the toll bridge, the M50 toll bridge. I read it for the second time there last week, just to recap on the details of it. And a bridge that was built for 29 million by a private company, I think Joe taxpayer and Mary taxpayer has now contributed about $1 billion back into that. Absolutely scandalous. 1,000 million, up to 1,000 million for an investment of 29 million. What I am arguing for is that, of course, we're going to have a mixed economy, but we must have control of the key infrastructure of the country, the key infrastructure and the key resources. And previous politicians and in previous decades, this was seen by people like Sean Namass. What we need to change, if we're to have a Republican vision for Ireland. And when I talk about republicanism, I don't talk about Catholic republicanism, Protestant republicanism, or Muslim republicanism. I talk about republicanism for everybody. It has to be an inclusive philosophy. But my Republican vision can be summed up simply in that in Ireland of equals, what is required is to have a radical shift from the current political and economic policies in order to build an Ireland of equals. We must develop all-Ireland integration so as to give us an economy of scale. I won't be too long now, be as quick as the rest of them. And a home market of 6.5 million. Hard to hold off RTE. The development of all-Ireland systems is far more cost-effective. Currently, we have 2 health systems, 2 currencies, 2 education systems, 2 industrial development authorities. That's unsustainable. A one-island economy, a one-island public service is far more cost-effective and needs to be efficient and more accountable. Looking to Brussels, and I'll conclude very quickly, looking to Brussels, we must build stronger alliances with progressive forces in Europe and other political movements in Europe. And it's only by reclaiming the institutions in Brussels and refocusing on people-centred social EU that we'll have a place, a democracy and accountability at the centre of the EU. We must ensure that the resources of the country are used to improve the quality of life for people of Ireland. Any extraction of gas or oil off our shores must be done at the right price and for the benefit of our citizens, like Norway. We don't have as much as them, but it must be for the benefit of the people. The current government must halt the sale of state assets and semi-state companies. These steps need to be taken in parallel with real political reform. The reform must be at both local and central level. And the spokesperson in local government, and having served on the Town Council and County Council, I'm passionate about this. The cornerstone of any reform must be about strengthening democracy, accountability and inclusion. We must also have active citizenship. We must become citizens again, not merely consumers. So, we need to have strong local government with maximum powers devolved from central government. And this must be underpinned by efficiencies in how public money is used and accountability to its citizens. So to conclude, we need economic reform, we need political reform, and this must be at local and national level. But to do this, we need to have greater levels of independence. Not independence to wave flags, not independence to be isolationist and shut ourselves off in the world, because we can't do that. We have to be part, we have to be world players. But to give ourselves the freedom here on this island to make the decisions and the choices that we need to create a fair, free and sustainable society. Cormac.